Mr. Jenkins, who are you? Judge Judy's voice cuts through the courtroom like a knife. The man standing at the defense table smirks, adjusting his expensive suit. His confidence is chilling. Across the room, Sarah Jenkins grips her daughter's hand. Her voice trembles as she finally says the words that have haunted her for weeks. That man is not my husband. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. The jury shifts uncomfortably. How could a wife not recognize her own husband? But then the prosecutor steps forward, holding up a DNA test result. His voice is steady, his words sending a shockwave through the room. This test proves that the man standing before you is an impostor. The so-called George Jenkins doesn't flinch. Judge Judy leans forward, her piercing eyes locked onto the accused. If you're not George, then where is he? The man chuckles, but the silence in the courtroom is deafening. What do you think? Could Sarah be mistaken, or is this man a master manipulator? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and let's dive into one of the most shocking courtroom cases ever. Sarah Jenkins wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be at home with her husband George and their daughter Andrea. Instead, she's sitting in a courtroom, staring at a man who wears her husband's face, but feels like a complete stranger. It all started 6 weeks ago. George Jenkins, a successful businessman, left for a routine work trip. He was supposed to return Friday night, but when he walked through the door earlier than expected, something was off. He smelled different. His laugh felt forced. The way he looked at her, it wasn't the same. And then there was Andrea. "Daddy doesn't call me little artist anymore," she had whispered one night. "He calls me the girl." Sarah tried to ignore it. She told herself she was being paranoid, until she found the receipt. A $5,000 purchase from a high-end jewelry store. Sarah hadn't received jewelry in years. So who was it for? The deeper she dug, the more everything fell apart. And then, the phone call. A private investigator she had secretly hired called with chilling news. "Sarah, I found George." "What? He's home with me." A long pause. "No, he's not. He's tied up in a cabin, barely alive." Sarah's world shattered in an instant. Who was the man sleeping next to her? Now, in front of Judge Judy, the truth is about to explode. Judge Judy leans forward, her expression sharp. "Let's cut the nonsense. If you're George Jenkins, prove it." The man at the defense table smiles, too confident. "I don't have to prove anything. My wife is confused." Sarah shakes her head. "I know my husband, and that's not him." The prosecutor, Ben Crump, steps in. He lays a folder on the desk and slowly slides out a document. "Your Honor, we have undeniable proof. DNA testing confirms this man is not George Jenkins." A murmur spreads through the courtroom. The defense attorney, Elena Carter, springs up. "This is outrageous. My client is the real George Jenkins. This so-called DNA test could have been tampered with." Judge Judy's gavel slams. "Counselor, sit down." The room falls silent. Then Ben Crump turns to the jury. "If this man isn't George Jenkins, then where is the real one?" A tense pause. And then the doors to the courtroom swing open. A frail, beaten man steps inside. His clothes hang loose on his body. His face is sunken, bruised, but his eyes, those eyes are familiar. Sarah gasps. "George?" The impostor at the defense table goes pale. Judge Judy turns to him. "Well, Mr. Jenkins, or should I say, Mr. Victor Jenkins." The courtroom is frozen. Every eye is locked on the real George Jenkins, standing weakly at the entrance. The impostor, Victor Jenkins, shifts uncomfortably in his chair. The confidence he once wore like armor is cracking. Judge Judy's voice is deadly calm. "I'll ask one last time, who are you?" Victor exhales sharply. He smirks, but the arrogance is gone. "Fine," he mutters. "You got me." Gasps ripple through the room. The prosecution wastes no time. Ben Crump steps forward. "Tell the court why you did this." Victor leans back in his chair, his jaw tight. He stares at George, then Sarah, then Andrea. Finally, he laughs, low and bitter. "You want the truth? I deserve that life more than he did. George had everything: success, a family, love, and me. I had nothing." His voice rises with venom. "I was left with our drunk father. I had to fight for everything while George lived like a king. So yeah, I took what should have been mine." Sarah's hands shake. Andrea buries her face in her mother's arm. Judge Judy's gaze hardens. So you kidnapped your own brother? Left him to die. Victor shrugs. Would have worked if she hadn't been so damn suspicious. He jerks his head toward Sarah. She ruined everything. Ben Crump interrupts. Let the record show that Victor Jenkins just confessed to identity fraud, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Judge Judy nods. And let the record also show that he's a damn fool. Victor glares. You think this is over? His voice drops to a chilling whisper. You'll never be safe. Security moves in, grabbing Victor by the arms. He doesn't fight. He just stares at George with pure hatred. Sarah wraps her arms around Andrea. George exhales shakily. The gavel slams. Judge Judy turns to the jury. You have everything you need. I expect a swift decision. The jury foreman nods. They've already made up their minds. The jury foreman stands, his face unreadable. The entire courtroom holds its breath. On the charges of identity fraud, kidnapping, and attempted murder, we find the defendant, Victor Jenkins, guilty on all counts. A wave of relief crashes over Sarah as she pulls Andrea into a tight embrace. George closes his eyes, exhaling the weight of months of fear. Judge Judy nods firmly. Victor Jenkins, your twisted little game ends today. She turns to security. Take him away. Victor doesn't struggle, but as the officers drag him toward the exit, he locks eyes with George. His lips curl into a chilling smile. Enjoy it while it lasts, brother. I'll be back. A shiver runs through the courtroom. Even Judge Judy's expression darkens. But then, the gavel slams one last time. This court is adjourned. Sarah lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Andrea clings to her, whispering, Is it really over? George kneels beside her, placing a hand over hers. Yes, sweetheart. We're safe now. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarm, cameras flashing. But Sarah ignores them. She takes George's hand, takes Andrea's, and together they walk away. The days following the trial feel unreal. The fear, the uncertainty, it's over, but the scars remain. George is home, but the nightmares linger. He wakes up in cold sweats, flashes of the dark cabin haunting his mind. Andrea refuses to sleep alone, still afraid that one night she'll wake up to another impostor. But slowly, things start to heal. Saturday morning, the familiar smell of pancakes fills the kitchen. Andrea's giggles echo as George flips one too high, making her laugh for the first time in weeks. Sarah watches, her heart swelling. The man before her, the real George, is back. One evening, Andrea tugs on George's sleeve. Can you call me little artist again? George smiles, pulling her close. You'll always be my little artist. Outside, the wind howls. Somewhere far away, Victor sits behind bars, but his final words still linger. I'll be back. Sarah glances at George. He squeezes her hand. No matter what the future holds, they'll face it together. The case of the stolen identity is over, but the shadows of betrayal never truly fade. Justice has been served. Victor Jenkins is behind bars, and the real George is finally home. But some scars never fade, and one question remains. Was this just the end of one chapter, or the beginning of another? What do you think? Will Victor ever try to escape? Should Sarah and George always stay on guard? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this gripping courtroom drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more thrilling cases. Until next time, justice always finds a way.